Harvard Business Review research says that of all the entrepreneurs in the United States, 27.5% of the entrepreneurs are immigrants. National Immigration Forum says that an immigrant is more likely to start a new business as compared to a US native. Nearly 44% of the Fortune 500 companies are started and co-founded by either a first generation or a second generation immigrant. So it's no surprise that immigrants coming in the United States contribute heavily to the US economy by creating new jobs, adding benefits, and a lot more around it. Now, a subset of those immigrants are H1-B work visa holders in the United States. H1-B visa helps non-US citizens to come and work for United States corporations, pay taxes, and contribute to the US economy. But the question is that can an H1-B visa holder start his or her own company in United States? Well, if you have dreams to do that, and if you have an idea or a problem that you are solving, but you are on H1B, don't give up on your hopes yet, because it is possible. Today, I'm in conversation with Harshavardhana, who started and co-founded his own company MinIO, being on H1B. Harsha shares with us his story, struggles, and his journey on how he made all of this happen. Now, before we start today's episode, I quickly want to mention three things. First, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Second, follow us on Instagram. It's not that complicated. We have some great things in store for you there too. Third, in the comment section below, we have segregated chapters that you can skip, revisit, or check out whatever you like. Now, I hope we all understand that this episode is in by no means an immigration or a legal advice episode. If you truly have aspirations to start your own company, please do visit an immigration attorney. Well, get started, get inspired, because it's not that complicated. Enjoy. Harshavardhana, also known as Harsha, co-founder of your own company MinIO, also a talented theatre actor on side, and most importantly, a really good friend of mine. It's an honor to have you on the show, Harsha.
Glad to be here, Snehal.
So, Harsha, you and I, we both are in Silicon Valley, the tech hub of the world. And being in Silicon Valley, I think it is pretty common for us to hear terms like startups and ideas and apps, Series A, Series B, venture capitalism, and everything associated with entrepreneurship and starting your own companies. Although, when we are an immigrant in United States and we are on visas like H1B, majority of the times the whole thought of starting your own company and co-founding, the whole thought is alien to us. Maybe because in our minds we feel it is not possible. There are so many things that we build up in our minds. You have started and co-founded your own company, MinIO, being on H1B. And that is what today we are going to talk about it. And hopefully with this, our viewers can get an inspiration to do something on themselves also.
Yeah. So starting a company on H1B is not that actually very uncommon. The reason being that it's statistically very well known that most of the co-founders actually are from actually different organizations, different countries, and they actually come on a visa to United States and start new companies. So it isn't that complicated. There is a legal process to it, and there is a way to get around it. So once you actually have an idea and co-founders, you can actually work it out with your lawyers. And it is sort of a seamless process to actually.
Beautiful. I know you have made it sound very simple. That is good. So we'll go in more detail. So going a little bit in past, can you share with us what was your inspiration to come to the US?
So back in so I actually came to United States in first time in 2009, and I came to as on a working visa in 2010, early 2010. The reason I came to US primarily was for a previous startup which I was working back in India called Gluster, which eventually got acquired by RedHat. So I came here primarily for the reason that we were expanding, and then there was a need for somebody to actually form an engineering team in India to come to United States and help out as part of customer support and growth of the organization. And that was one of the opportunities that arose itself. And then I of course thought that I've never been to US. It's an exciting opportunity. Why not? So let's just come to US and see for myself.
Interesting, interesting. And you mentioned that your previous company was acquired by Red Hat. Is that correct?
Yes, it
Okay.
was.
So how long were you at Red Hat?
So I was at RedHat after the acquisition for 4.5 years
After the
before
acquisition? Okay.
yes, after we jumped into MinIO.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So here is one question that comes to our mind, right? That when we are associated with such big corporation, yes, we do get ideas that just keep coming up in our minds on side, right? Uh, when was your journey of having this idea of starting MinIO, and what was that journey like?
So, well, the we didn't actually have a concrete. I mean, I personally did not have a concrete idea of what I definitely wanted to actually be part of another startup early in from a just like because I had a previous experience, so I just wanted to be part of the startup culture very early on. And so we were working on few ideas. To say the least, there was another person who is actually another co-founder of MinIO, was actually the previously the co-founder of Gluster as well.
Got it.
So along with him, we were working on multiple different ideas from related to robotics to AI and some ideas related to machine learning stuff and something we always had back of our mind is to do something better than what we did in Gluster.
Mm-hmm.
So we could actually do something better in MinIO, and that was what I would say the final fruition of what we wanted to achieve is currently what we are actually doing. So, and we explored this idea while we were at Red Hat, and eventually, after 4.5 years, we kind of decided that, and it went on for a couple of years. We iterated on multiple different ways to do it, and then we finally figured out, and then jumped
Very,
into, yeah.
very, very interesting. So, Harsha, one of the things that being an employee of a company, we always fear that hopefully there is no overlap of IP, right? We don't want to come in the way of what company is building, and that fear is always there. That what if somehow the idea that I'm building on my side overlaps with what company's vision and mission is, and I will jeopardize my future of startup. So, how is it for like you?
So the IP wise, indeed, there is actually there are of course such type of problems that actually can exist. But from our point of view, it wasn't really anything anything competitive is generally encouraged in the area. That's what we have seen. There is nothing that, for example, if you want to build a new social media startup, you can do it. It doesn't matter. It's just that primarily that you don't necessarily, if they have patents, you don't want to infringe upon them. Those kind of things, or you're not copying code and stealing code, not giving citations. Those kind of things are what you should be careful about.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, generally the organizations such as Red Hat actually encourages people to actually contribute outside of their daily jobs as well.
And when you say contribute outside, do you mean open source code?
Yes. So yeah, Red Hat being the open source free software based company, which primarily develops only free software, is a type of an organization which generally encourages contributions to different projects outside of your regular work that you might do in Red Hat.
Got it. Got it. That is extremely interesting. So now here I am. I'm say working, or I am in any part of the world, and I want to come to United States, or I'm already in United States, right? I have an idea, and I want to pursue something of co-founding my own company. So why don't you walk us through what's the legal process like?
So primarily, of course, to first thing is to actually have a concrete idea that and have trustable co-founders that you can actually begin with, and then after that, then you go through the process of actually registering your company, establishing it. You may even actually pitch to certain investors when you may have investors who agree to invest. Once all of that is established, then there is a very well known legal process. I might not be able to give you all the details of it, but it's just a standard process that you can actually follow. And um, there are, of course, corporate legal lawyers which actually help you do all of that in every step along the way.
Got
And
it.
even investors who actually invest in the company will make sure, even if you don't know, if you don't have such contacts, they can actually introduce and make such contacts as well. And then immigration wise, then there is another standard procedures that you can actually follow.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, and of course, as you quite wisely mentioned that if at all there are any questions or something, then consult a good immigration lawyer.
Yeah,
I think this idea is mainly to give guidance that okay, there is something possible in that direction. Is that correct?
correct. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So now, one thing you mentioned that you need to have a trustable co-founder with you, someone who you trust. Does it matter if that co-founder is also an immigrant, or do you think the co-founder needs to be a US citizen and you have to be in partnership with that sort of structure?
Yeah, it's more so from their immigration status. I would say that the most important part is actually be a trustworthy person that
Interesting.
you could actually trust and work with, and you also enjoy working with that person for a long period. So because a startup life can actually range from anywhere to depending on how long you want to do it, maybe it can range from 5 years to 15 years, even 20 years, and by the time it's 20 years it could be IPO, like those kind of things. Uh, uh, to getting along, being able to work together and also have this trust between each other is the most important factor that you would need. Rest of it is immigration wise, everything else can be resolved if you, because those are simply just a matter of some legal paperwork, and those are well established practices in the Bay Area startup world.
Got it. And when you say legal paperwork as far as H1B goes, did you mean like for us, one of the processes that, say, for example, I change a job, I have to do my H1B transfer to the new company. So is it something similar?
Yes,
Okay.
that'll how it'll be. So you will have an established company, and then just like how you do, like you have to show what's the reason that you're doing. Like, you have to establish the fact that there is a good reason that this startup needs you, and you have that kind of a skill set. Those type of things, if you establish, and then the H1 transfer just happens, just like any other company would.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, this actually sorts out a lot of different things. Okay, so now that we have a legal thing in place, we have a little bit of a clear direction on where we want to go. I want to take a step further and talk more about the grass being greener on the other side. Us being in corporations, we feel that, oh, I should have my own idea and I should just start my own startup, and here everything is just fancy and in limelight. So what has your experience been with respect to that? Is the grass really greener on the other side?
Well, there are certainly lots of advantages of actually being in a startup than being in a big company.
Okay.
To some extent, I mean, everybody's experiences may vary, but touchwood for me, fortunately, in many ways, my experiences with startup have been quite remarkable. So because it has been very good, and I've learned a lot. So the main thing about being in a startup world, the advantage is that you get to see an organization grow from its infancy to a fruition to a larger organization where multiple people are working on very interesting ideas, and then you also get to experiment with interesting ideas in the beginning, and then these are the things that you would not be able to do so much in a larger organization, and so because there is a well-established practice that you would have to follow and a well-oiled machinery in a larger organization. But in the startup world, you could actually explore new, frontiers is what I would call it. So, and that helps you grow as an individual, and also, you get to actually see the overall process. Let's say you didn't actually co-found a company; you just joined an early-stage startup. You get to see all of this eventually while leading that to starting your own company eventually.
Got it. Got it. So Harsha, majority of the times we have this question that when we move to a startup, there is a financial hit that an individual have to take. Do you think that is true or is it a myth? Did you have to take any financial hit?
Uh, I'll answer the first one. So it is not a myth. Primarily, co-founders actually take a financial hit primarily from the basis of how they arranged their shares in the early company when they started. So it's more like a trade-off between how you actually want to see, So those type of things are actually known to happen. Uh, but it depends. So financial hit is different for different people. Certain people get by actually having only a certain amount of money. They know their. So these are the things that it is a. It depends on person to person. And for, let's say, for the second question, did I have to take a financial hit? Yes and no, because there is some financial hit, but it's not so much that it generally makes it life very hard. So all in all, it's not necessarily such a big of a problem, I would say.
Got it. And I'm assuming you had all these things worked out with your co-founders before starting the company and the structure.
Correct. Yes.
Got it. Okay, beautiful. Excellent. So, Harsha, let's talk about the pros and cons of being a co-founder on an H1B or being an immigrant. So, what are some limitations and what are some good things that are possible with that?
Yeah. So on a H1B, when you actually do a transfer into a new organization, the H1B transfer primarily only works for similar skill set, because if you need to change your title to, or you want to go into a newer role, your H1B needs to be reapplied, and it goes through the same approval process by the immigration authorities and all that. Whereas a transfer is much more simpler. So now with transfer, there can be limitations in terms of what your actual role can be within a new startup. So it's not that you cannot have an executive role. If you are a H1B with an executive, it's fine. But sometimes as an engineer, we are all software engineers, senior software, principal software, those kind. And when we do a H1B transfer, that's what your role eventually will still be. So, but it's not really a big of a problem, because within the organization, you still actually are, you still are well respected. It's not like, you lose a title and you're like, another you don't have to think like that. It's because in a startup, it's a very different mindset. So you're not necessarily chasing around titles so much. So, but yes, from a legal point of view, H1B dictates what your eventually salary is going to be, what your role is going to be from a legal standpoint.
Got it. Got it. And so, as you mentioned, whatever you're assigned an H1B for, that skill set, that exactly needs to be there. So it is possible to have an executive role if you have a degree and a skill set in that area.
Correct. That is how I have seen. So in my case, primarily think of it as I was a senior engineer, sort of principal engineer in RedHat, and then I moved. I will be pretty much in the same category as far as the immigration authorities are concerned.
Got it. Okay. All right. So the next question that I'm going to ask you is little personal in nature, but it is important to know that, and that is the startup part and the family part, our relationships and our loved ones. They usually don't go too well together, because you're giving your 100% to either this or this. You are married to Preeti, who happened to be a great friend of mine too, and you went through this startup journey while you were going through your marriage. So how was that like? Did startup have any impact on your married life in general?
It does actually. It can have different levels of impact depending on your partner, and in my case, primarily there was an impact, and we worked it out, and it was. And when if you have a very supportive spouse, and it generally works out fine. But there are, of course, it's not like as simple as it sounds. There is, of course, you have to put in some work. It's not like you have to have a personal. You have to be personally responsible and taking care of the person, listening to them, or their needs and everything, just like how you would do within a startup. So it is something that of a combined journey that it's just a matter of time that they also buy into your idea, saying that okay, so while we do this, we may actually see a great future for us together. And if we do it together, there will be we can share the rewards together in the future. So all of these are actually just part of the journey. So you deal with it as the time goes by. But it is hard, but you can actually deal with it. So because and I've seen most people deal with it in reasonable ways.
Right. There's a very beautiful sentence that you just said right now, that it is important for them also to buy into that same idea and
Correct.
same journey.
Yeah, you have to make them believe that they are also participant in it as
Yes.
much as you are.
Yes, yes. No, I think that's a very beautiful statement, because you are not going to do it alone. You will need.
Correct. Correct.
Harsha, so we know that the startup journeys are not always unicorns and rainbows. There are a lot of tough challenges that one has to go through, and I'm sure you must have been through some tough, frustrating phases also. Do you want to share some of your frustrating experiences during this journey?
Yeah, sure. Startups journey always have some frustrating times that is given. So it generally happens to be that we are actually working on an idea, and certain ideas don't really pan out, and those are the frustrating things that can happen very early on when things are actually somewhere in the exploratory stage, and things are not very fully on the ground. And and these situations can actually put a strain on your relationships with your co-founders, and things can get sour quickly if you don't really work it out. And these are the things that you will actually generally face with any startup. It can happen that you may actually eventually hire someone who's also problematic in nature, in terms of they have the different expectations, and you may have different expectations from them. So those kind of things can also lead to a growing up of a bad culture and within the organization. Those are actually the frustrating points of any startup, as I would say. Uh, I don't really actually remember exactly different. I won't be able to say exact situations where things might actually have been, but I believe that there are many incidents that would happen, and we seem to have eventually worked all of that out, and now we are actually in our sixth year in journey.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Congratulations on that. So now a point blank question to you.
Yeah.
What if all of this didn't work out? Did you have a plan B?
There isn't as such as a plan B, to be honest. Uh, our primary goal is to make sure that plan A always works.
Yeah.
So plan B is it's, I would say that it's non-existent in many ways. So
Okay. Harsha, being an immigrant on H1-B or any sort of visa, one fear that we constantly have is if things don't work out, we will probably lose our status. We are just trying to make ends meet, just trying to sustain, make sure that status is going as needed, and we are avoiding any risk in those areas. So if I have to ask you that same question, did any of those things bother you, that if things didn't work out well, you probably might have to go back to your own country or change the geographical locations? Did that thought come to your mind?
uh, yes, the thought has actually come to my mind, but for personally, from my point of view, if I actually lose H1B, it won't necessarily be such of a big problem, primarily from a job point of view. If I have to, for my company at least, it may actually have some impact in terms of how we communicate and being in the same time zone, those kind of things. But from a productivity point of view, deliverables, it might not necessarily have that much of an impact.
Okay.
I could go back to India, do the same thing from there. It's not a big deal, and eventually, even might actually come back on a separate visa, such a separate H1B or whatever.
Right.
So, but that process of actually being in H1, doing in this continuous process of renewals and so forth, and not knowing that will it actually happen or not, and that type of messy affair is constant. Being on H1B, so that is a given. I don't know if there is a good solution to that, because I don't see anything that may happen in another few years that may actually improve that. So yeah, so we are all in this problem, but I guess from a company point of view, it may Depends on people to people. If they have a lot more investments here, they want to stick around, it may actually cause more problems for them. But personally for me, it will cause a, I would say, minor inconvenience, but we will get through that if it eventually happens.
Fair
Such
enough.
things can happen. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, that's a very, very good, sorted answer. So now coming to the last segment of the show. The show is called "It's Not That Complicated," and the whole idea is that we want to take such complex topics and things that we feel are just far off there and not achievable, but we want to make it simple for people. We want people, our viewers, to start doing something today. So Harsha, if our viewers have an idea and they're on H1-B, they're an immigrant, and they want to get something started today, what are some 3 CTAs, some 3 call to actions that you will give them that they can start doing as of today?
Yeah, so I would say the first and foremost most important thing is to find a trustworthy co-founder, which is the most probably most important thing. Preferably a friend whom you have worked for probably a decade or so. That will be better. The second one will be to have an idea which you are passionate about, and you could spend most of you could give yourself fully for that for at least a decade or more, because that's how much it might take for a startup to actually go from the beginning to actually succeed. And the third one primarily would be to find a good type of investors who can actually help you with the journey and help you also eventually make the right decisions. Because investors are not just the people who are actually going to give you money; they're also active participants as part of your growth in the company as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Harsha, for such an awesome interview. I had a pleasure and a blast talking to you today.
Thank you, Snehal. Glad to be here.
I want to share a brilliant idea with you guys. Are you guys ready? What if you subscribe to the channel right now, and every Thursday you get new episodes with new topics? You get to invest in yourself and upgrade yourself. How cool is that? Well, then let's just do it. Subscribe. It's not that complicated.